Well, welcome back to another session. I hope you were well. I'm going to be speaking as a continuation process to a topic or theme that I began uh, about 2 weeks ago. This is certainly the second week in which I started with a topic called the challenge to succeed. The focus was men. Um, the section with regards to the focus had to do with the challenge that most men have in the West, particularly relationally, as a consequence of having what I call the B software, the beta software, and how that is affecting men in relationships, but also affecting women with said men who have the same beta installation in relationships. So, in the session I did yesterday, I covered 15 observations or traits or characteristics. I said in the prior session that I would come back and I would expand on each of the 15 items in more detail. Today is, I guess, the first part of that process. My attempt will be to cover 4 specific items, numbered chronologically from the sessions that I covered yesterday. Let me preface the conversation so that those who haven't seen the prior session understand, I guess, the overarching theme. Number one, I am not making a moral argument. As a matter of fact, I'm not even making a judgment of value. It's not a value judgment. I'm simply making an observation and relating an observation in a way that the primary purpose is to enable men to understand what controls them and sometimes how they are controlled without being aware of how they are being controlled and how they're operating with the beta software without being aware of it. And so take this as it comes. This is not an attack on any particular group of men or persons. I said that in the West, on a balance of probabilities, 80% of men born in the West or who live in the West are more likely to have the beta software than they are the normal software. In other words, beta comes from the Greek alphabet, referring to second. In computer speak or language, it's used to describe a software that is not complete. It's been developed to a certain stage or level, is made public to a select group of people. The idea being to allow for feedback for it to continue its development to its complete state. So when we refer to beta software in men, we're simply saying these men are not complete. There was something missing during their developmental stages. Now, let me start by saying as follows. You're born a male, you develop into a boy, you go into boyhood, you develop into man, you go into manhood, and then you become a gentleman. 4 stages. You're born a male, you become a boy, you go into boyhood as a result of work, teachings, developments, guidance, and provision. The journey from boyhood to manhood is where some of that responsibility transfers to you, the man. It requires work. And that is a word that I'm going to refer to in the first of the 4 items I will discuss today. You develop from boyhood to manhood through work. Study, practice, work. You move from manhood to being a gentleman by being crafted. 4 stages, but you can skip a stage. There are men who are gentlemen, absolutely delightful, were taught properly, were raised properly, crafted properly, but skipped the manhood phase or have incomplete parts of the manhood phase. So they've gone from male to boy to gentleman, and they skipped completely what it means to be a man, either because there were no fathers, there were no role models around them, and so they sadly, these men had no option as a result of no implements for masculine type, and therefore they installed the wrong software, the feminine software. So they skipped a stage. Now, I said in the session that I started yesterday that when I refer to beta, it has nothing to do with a man's overall value. Keep that very, very, very clear in mind, at heart. I'm not saying it reduces your value. I'm simply suggesting that there is a part of the sexual marketplace process where there is an effect. For example, I did a 10-part series session where I talked about how to assess a man's value. The purpose of that conversation was to equip women with thought processes of making sure that they vet the men in their lives carefully. I went through several measurement measures that could be used. A man's economic intrinsic value, EIV, a man's sexual marketplace value, SMV, a man's non-sexual marketplace value, NSMV, a man's gentleman value, GV, a man's character value, CV, a man's manhood value, MV, and finally, I think there are two more that I covered. The full series are available, so I won't go into the detail. It's important that I make it very clear that having the beta software does not affect any of those values as a man, except for one. You can have a man who has got wealth and who has a great job, but is still beta. You can have a man who has a high non-sexual marketplace value in terms of his attitude and behavior and his training, and still be beta. You can have a man who has good character, in other words, his morals, his philosophy of life are sound, but still be beta. Therefore, there is no correlation, or very little correlation, between having the beta software and all of those valuation approaches, apart from one, manhood value. At the core, the beta software exists wherever the manhood process is incomplete or was not taught or trained in the right way. And I gave examples in the session I did yesterday. Absent fathers, so you're raised primarily by a woman. You went to schools, you're taught by primarily women, had no role models, did not get involved in sports that allowed you to see masculine role models around you. Number two, a feminine father who effectively you modeled after, but he had the same issues such as an absent father, perhaps a father who was also feminine, and therefore what you have is an installation software where you've simply replicated what your father is. Let me start today's session by going through the 4 key areas that I'd like to speak to in today's session. Now, the first I mentioned was these observations, traits, and ways that you as a man can recognize whether you have a beta software, and a woman can recognize whether the man in her life or pursuing her has the software. Now, I can say something for a fact. There is something instinctively in every one of us. It's that call to something greater. It's almost as though you can hear a voice in you calling you forward and reminding you of what you could be. If you have the wrong software, it means you're performing in a manner that is either opposite or contrary to how you should perform. Like every product, if you abnormally use it, it functions in a way not consistent with the way it should have functioned. So keep that in mind. Number one, if a man pursues you for more than a month, I said, pursues you for more than a month intensively, with no reciprocated investment in time, resources, affection, intimacy, or sex from you, the woman, then that is an indication of a beta installation. Let me expand. I did a session some years ago during which I explained how between age 18 and 35, how men should focus on their purpose, men should focus on their aspirations, financial or economic, their wealth plans, how men should focus on their jobs, their careers, education. Exclusively, the 95% of his time, or your time as a man, should be dedicated towards your future, becoming that person that you should be. The key focus was your purpose. And I said 18 to 30, you're grinding in a career. 18 to 22, university or college. 23, all the way to 30, allowing time for you to go around and make mistakes. But with that period, you should have about 10,000 hours of practice, 2,000 working hours every year, 5 years. You have your 10,000 hours of practice. So you become quite competent. You develop a mastery in something, especially if it's consistent and continuous, never ending improvement and growth. So at 30, you have some competence. You have a job, you have a career. You've got the education. You're solid. You've had the opportunity to apprentice and be paid for the time to learn under someone else's guidance. 30 to 35 is when you actually go hard on your purpose, on that dream of yours, so you can fail. The key part that men avoid or miss is failure. Now, when I make reference to number one, which is a man that pursues you for more than a month intensively with no reciprocated investment in time, resources, affection, intimacy, or sex, what I'm suggesting is that if you've gone through the process, especially if you're above 35, and certainly above 30, you've come to a point where you understand your value. The most important resource we have is time. We exchange our time for everything we want. So if you were dating a woman or pursuing a woman for a month, and I use the example of 1 date per week, so 4 dates, and there is no reciprocation, either in interest, affection, intimacy, sex, time, or resources, it's an indication that she is not interested. Now, there should be a pride that comes with manhood and a pride that comes with masculinity. In other words, you meet someone, and if they are not interested, you take that as a clue that they do not recognize your value. Let me talk about some definitions. I use a good example. Many times when we meet people and we're interacting with people, one of the questions that we will ask, and I have seen the question being asked either by a woman to another woman, is, do you like him or do you love him? Now, at the start of the relationship, like is the right word to use because you don't know him. As the relationship progresses, once there's intimacy and the relationship is extended, love could be what's used to define the emotion. Women lean towards like and love as a way of understanding or establishing between women how the other woman or both women feel about the significant person in their lives. Men, we come at it from a different perspective. The question is not do you like him or do you love him? The question is, do you admire, respect, honor, and then like or love? Key word, because respect comes first. Respect has to come first. Now, this is where I refer to the definitions. Honor is a word we use regularly. Honor and respect are not synonymous, they're different words. Respect has to do with recognizing someone's difference. And if a man is pursuing a woman for a long period of time with no reciprocation in time, resources, any effort on her part, no intimacy, no affection, no sex, it's an indication that she has not recognized your difference. And it is an indication that you are, put in more direct terms, you're in a place where you're being tolerated rather than celebrated, because you should stand out as a man. And if you're a successful, productive man, competitive, assertive, and you know where you're going, what you're looking for is a heartbeat for that journey. You don't leave the path of your purpose to pursue a woman, especially when she doesn't reciprocate in any manner. So my first reference was, you pursue someone for that longer time. That's an indication that you're running on a beta software, because it simply means you haven't discovered your true purpose. You haven't discovered your true person. You don't understand the value you have as a man. And therefore, in many ways, you're pussy-whipped, to put it very mildly. I did a session some time ago. I did initially a few years ago, a refresh a few months ago, in which I said you have to learn as a man how to be indifferent about sex. Our need to ejaculate as men can be so strong that we would do any and everything just for an orgasm, just to have intimacy from a woman. We were conditioned, we were raised to pursue the admiration, the affection, the love, the praise of women, which is why we do everything. All of our being is motivated by that approval that we get from women. You see that when you haven't discovered your purpose, because your purpose is the reason for your birth. And when you have a purpose-driven life, that is your focus. As a matter of fact, below age 35, remember what I said, 95% of your time should be focused on your goals and your future. 5% can be spent on women. A man who pursues a woman, therefore, for more than a month, intensively with no reciprocation, is spending more time than he should be spending, and therefore he has it inverted. That's number one. Number two, a man who is willing to move, to relocate, to leave his peers, to leave his family, to leave his nation, to leave his place of work, to leave his garden in pursuit of a woman. That is an indication that you have a beta installation. We've taught men in the West, and I'm referring particularly to men in the West. We've taught a lot of men very poorly. Many years ago, there was something called the dance between men and women. A man courted a woman, and rightly so. Now you have to understand that we have been emancipated. We deregulated the sexual marketplace. Women wanted freedom, sexual expression. They got what they wanted. But back in the day, everything I'm suggesting now could have been perceived to have been harsh. Why? We had several different relational and societal mores. A woman was supposed to have chastity. A man was supposed to have come with a level of a gentleman's nature. So a man could pursue a woman for years, but what he was looking for was youth, purity and beauty. The most important was purity. So the virgin's price was a price a man would pay as a result of having purity. In the West, women are having sex from 12 and 13. So keep this in mind in the conversation we are having. So at 28, 27, 29, she has multiple sexual partners for whom the price of entry or admission was nothing. Sometimes it was just a drink, sometimes it was just a smile, sometimes she just felt like it. So as a man who, let's assume in this case, you're 30 or 35, and you've worked hard. Now you're pursuing her for more than a month, whereas someone, perhaps the person who got it first, and who took her virginity, paid nothing as a price, and the woman in question has given freely to other men, and you're paying the highest price, and there is no reciprocation. It indicates that perhaps you're in the wrong place. But more importantly, that you are the wrong person. You have the wrong software. That was number one. Number two, a man willing to relocate and leave his garden, simply meaning the most important thing we have as men is work. Now, work is interpreted in different ways. When I talk about work, I'm specifically referring to a purpose. Linked to that purpose is an assignment, or a task, or a magnificent obsession, a calling, a duty, an obligation, a responsibility. What we do every day, we call work. Some people have jobs, some people have careers. We put that all in the same category. But what I'm referring to is your garden. In other words, a place where you've been given the assignment to protect, to cultivate, to nurture, to provide, to develop, to bring out the best, and a place where you should flourish, where the uniqueness of you as a man and your distinctiveness as a man is seen around people. To move yourself and to uproot yourself, a tree planted well, that everyone can enjoy and see. To uproot yourself and move yourself to another location, to another region, where you don't have your network, the group of men around you who should support you, your family, in pursuit of a woman's affection or love or intimacy, means you've got the whole script wrong. You can leave where you are in pursuit of your purpose, in pursuit of a work, in pursuit of a calling, in pursuit of a better life. But the key part of that is you're actually focused on the vision. You're traveling in the direction of your dream. Now, Henry David Thoreau said that if a person will advance confidently in the direction of their dreams and endeavor to live the life that they have imagined, that they will meet with success, unexpected, in uncommon hours. In other words, you look up someday and say, I did it. The progressive realization of a worthy goal. That goal should be your purpose, your work. And you do all of the administration in your garden. So a man who simply says, I'm leaving everything behind and I'm going to start anew. But my motivation is what is between a woman's legs is the wrong installation for that man. It means you're running on a software that simply says there's a malfunction. Absolutely malfunction. Because you should have the vision. She should be relocating to join your vision, to join your leadership, so that you have security to be able to provide, protect, profess your love through your presence and be the priest. But the key part of all of that is founded on your purpose. So to journey across seas, to journey across different lands, to leave a job, to move across states or across villages, on the purpose, on the focus that I'm doing this for in pursuit of a woman, means that you are in the wrong place. You're out of alignment. Think about a car. When a wheel alignment goes off, it starts to drive poorly. It's only a matter of time before the wheels or the tires go off. The wheel has to be recentered. You need a wheel alignment to get you back in alignment. The reason being, your true north should not be what is between a woman's legs. It should not even actually be what's the vessel of a woman. It should not be in another person. It should not be in a man. It should be in yourself. And that part of you that is spirit should be pushing you towards developing to becoming your best self. You pour into yourself. And here is what's fascinating. Women who have men who will throw away any and everything in pursuit of their love seldom admire, respect, and honor said men. They might like them, they might even love them. But over time, you find that becomes resentment. Why? It's instinctively in a woman's nature to look for father, which is why she leaves one father and cleaves to another father. Father is supposed to be someone who bounds the house together. Husband bounds the house together if he is married. So she has a father, which is a symbol for a rock that is solid. But a man who is fleeting in his stability and will just move for what's between a woman's legs indicates that he's not stable. He's not a rock you can rely on or depend on. And so the fear in a woman is sometime in the future, this might be my time, he's moving for me. But what if something comes along that is another distraction? Can I depend on this rock? You see, the good right foundation to build what I will consider to be my future. So if you fall within that category, you have a beta installation. Number 3, a man who pedestalises a woman and constantly wears the feminine frame was what I said in the session yesterday. I also went on to say a man who shows no emotion of stoicism and is, I guess, too emotional at a rate disproportionate to the women or to women generally. A man who focuses on a woman's vision rather than his vision, and considers it's his duty to support her. It wouldn't be unusual for you to consider anything I've said in this third category to be unfair, and I welcome that. But let me expand so you can understand. When we talk about a cherry on the cake, the location of a cherry is something on top of the cake. A man who pedestalizes the woman, in other words, puts her as a cherry on the cake, the most important thing on the cake. There's nothing wrong with loving and being affectionate or being affectionate towards a woman. But the cherry on your cake should be your purpose. The cherry on your cake should be your vision, what you want to achieve or accomplish. That should be the cherry. I'll put it in a different way. I've used this example before. And I've made it very clear to those who have either been intimate with me over the many years. My purpose comes first. I come second. My work comes third. And the woman comes fourth. Now, a woman who hears that initially might be wondering and thinking that the sequence is wrong. That she should come at least first or second. This is where most beta males make the mistake. Here is the key. My purpose is the reason for my birth. It's my calling. It's my, you might say, my magnificent obsession. It's my reason. It's why I'm here. And that purpose is the reason for my birth. Therefore, it comes first. That should be understandable. For a woman, now let me make it clear. Let me also state that from a feminine perspective. A woman's purpose comes first. She comes second. Her work can come third. A man in her life should come fourth. This is not a discrimination on one way or the other. As individuals, as standalone, independent individuals, that is what it should be. Now, when there has been a union, a formalized union as of a marriage, there is a displacement of positions. But here's the key thing. If my purpose is first, it means I would always stay focused on the vision. And that's where my energy and replenishment will come from. My energy, my drive will come from there. I have to put myself first because I can't give you what I do not have. So I have to take care of myself. When you're flying in planes, they usually have an announcement. If we go into a turbulence or a crash and you're with someone, put your mask on first before you help another person. In other words, you come first. Your work comes next. Why? Because there's a responsibility you have as a man. You might be able to wax lyrically with poems, but at some point the belly cries and says, I want food. The resource component, the ability to provide and protect, is intrinsically connected with, once you've solved the problem of purpose, connected with a man's responsibility. So work and the ability to take the resources you've been given, the talent, the skills, the intelligence, and convert it and provide for her. Because after all, she's leaving father and you're professing your love for her, so you have to provide. So the fact that she comes forth doesn't mean she's not significant. Of course, she's the most important thing in your life. But what we're referring to is an order of things and how things should be done. A man, therefore, who pedestalizes a woman pushes her up to number one. And a man who says, you are the most important thing in my life, is operating on a beta installation because he has the whole sequence upside down. He's put you as the cherry on the top, which is wrong. And here is the key thing for women to understand. You should feel, on a long-term basis, unsafe with a man who pedestalizes you. Instinctively, it feels great because you want to feel you're loved and you're special and he cares for you and everything, his world revolves around you. But women grow to repel or grow to be repelled by such men. Why? Because in a woman's nature, a woman instinctively recognizes that a man who pedestalizes her, there's something missing, because it means he doesn't put his purpose first, and it means she cannot rest in her feminine nature. Now, women who object to everything I've shared so far, the first three, are usually masculine women. Masculine women attract soft men. Masculine women attract beta males. It might work for them, but not for the long term. Masculine women attract weaker men. Now, we've raised a generation of hard women since the 1960s and softer men. So what I'm referring to is not something unusual. It's something that is more the norm than the exception. A man who does not have the emotion and stoicism, by that I simply mean, men, we are supposed to express emotions. We've solved the need for survival in the West. So the issue about security, safety, survival, we've solved. Our roles previously was, well, you had to have a purpose, and we got our purpose purely from a societal perspective. The government said, we need you. We have a war. Would you stand for your country? So we had a purpose, then we have the responsibility of provision and protection. We've solved all the issue about the need for survival, and therefore we have to relearn as men other ways to show our love and to profess our love. I talk about the priestly duties, and I talk about professing your love. A man can profess his love. A man can be romantic, he can be kind, he can be affectionate, but you must have emotional stoicism. You must be disciplined with your emotion. You must be disciplined because, as a man, the ability to control and regulate your emotion is what gives you the ability to stay on the rational plane and to make the right decisions. Men, we run our logic through our thought process, our thinking mind, our thinking brain. We run our logic through our intellectual faculties, not our emotions. Women tend to run their logic through their emotions, which is why women are more emotional and men are more logical. So a man who doesn't show emotional stoicism in relationships is indicating that his software is feminine, not masculine. And such a man, most women at the initial stage will find that to be great. Over time, you'll find that repulsive. Think about this from the perspective of you walk into a general's, it's a war, and you walk into your general's office to ask for directions of how the troops should move forward, and you see your general sobbing in the tent. Immediately you see such an image, an experience. All of the respect you had, all of the admiration you had, all of the honor you had will most likely disappear. Now, it's easy for people to say, well, it will indicate that he has feelings. Yes, it sounds good in theory, but Yogi Berra said that in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. Men do not follow leaders who do not show emotional stoicism. Women do not follow leaders who do not show emotional stoicism. So a man who cannot control his emotions, a man who thinks the vision is her vision and he's there to support her vision, is doing something, he's displacing his responsibility. This is the key part. And pushing that responsibility to her, because he's effectively saying, I don't want to be responsible for leadership and headship. It's important for me to support you because your dreams are more important. So he's putting the responsibility on you, which should always be rejected by women. Number 4, and I close. A man who shuns leadership, responsibility, and instead chooses partnership. We talk about this 50-50 partnership thing. Women keep saying, I'm looking for a partner. Well, men who embrace the 50-50 partnerships are normally beta males and installations. Now, this does not mean you go out for a date and you go half-half. That's different. I'm talking about the shunning of the responsibility to be the leader, to be responsible, to be the one who actually, when we say the buck stops with me, I'm not suggesting that I make all the decisions. I'm simply saying I'm putting myself in a position where I am responsible for the success, for the accomplishment of the vision of all the goal, for the unions or the ability of the union to thrive. A man is the foundation in a relationship. The foundation is often unseen, but it supports and undergirds the entire structure. A man who says, no, I want 50-50 is effectively saying, I do not want to be responsible for 100%. I want to be responsible for 50%. And I need you to come into the basement with me and stay as a structure with me upon which we build everything that we will call our unit. Now recognize, stress comes with leadership. Stress is built for shoulders, not hips. And a man who simply says, well, I'm looking for 50-50 is running on his beta installation. Because responsibility should come as an obligation, a duty, a responsibility, but a joy, something you're joyful about. It doesn't mean you make all the decisions. It simply means that you simply say, like a CEO of a company, I don't know what's going on the shop floor, but if something goes wrong, I'm responsible. Which is why we commend generals, and business people, and leaders who step forward and say, this happened under my watch. It should never have happened, and therefore I tender my resignation because I think I have failed in instilling in all of my people my ideal mission, and therefore I have failed. So, a man who believes in partnership, which is why in the West you tend to see a lot more people talking about partnerships. A decision has to be made, and the woman. let me say this in a different way. I've noted that we've raised a generation of harder women and softer men. A lot of men were raised by single parent mothers and no fathers, or when they were fathers, feminine fathers. These men, therefore, this is a key part of the whole process, grew up to see their mother do everything. An incredible job. And so they came to have an awe of women and have no expectation of themselves. So when they went out dating, they looked for women who were just like their mothers. A woman who can hold her own. But there was an abdication of responsibility. Because your father wasn't there, he didn't teach you how to journey from male to boyhood to manhood to being a gentleman. So these men were raised from being male by women, installed with the feminine software to being boys. They skip the manhood process, hence the beta installation. They move into being gentlemen. And these men were told by their mothers, you have to treat women in a certain way. You have to be respectful. Her opinion matters, which it does, but it always has to be about partnership. It's about 50-50. Why? The need for survival no longer exists. So the need for men, generally speaking, no longer exists in the West to the same degree as other parts of the world. We'll solve the need for survival. And therefore, men are confused. We lack a sense of purpose. We lack a sense of meaning. We do not know who we are. We have no identity because there are no fathers in the house. And our mothers say, women are important. Listen to the woman. And it should be 50-50. So these men go into relationships, adopting a stance which is to abdicate their full responsibility for being the foundation upon which the entire structure is built. Such men have a beta installation. Now, those are 4 items I will cover in today's session. In the session that follows, I'll pick up from number 5 and I'll cover another 4 items, and hopefully we get to number 15 in the next covering sessions. Now, I hope this has been useful.